Welcome to the Parham Group Self-Storage Construction Seminar from Concept to Completion. Today, we're going to talk about demonstrating the sequence of events that are involved in normal construction. This is targeted to a clientele of people who are getting in the industry for the first time and have never done construction, and it gives them kind of a general idea of what to expect and what they should expect from their general contractor. It starts with conception. We are going to look at how to visualize looking at a raw piece of property and determining what could be built on that facility that would give you the best return on investment. Second of all, we're going to go through site planning. How do you look at site planning? How does that determine and what the importance of site planning is during the course of construction? And finally, we're going to talk about the completion of construction, all the different sequences that you go through from start to finish. The case study for today's presentation is the Noah's Ark Self-Storage on Landstar Boulevard in Orlando, Florida, which was built a year and a half ago. There was 5 acres. It cost $1 million for the 5 acres. The square footage was just a little over 100,000 gross square feet. And the project itself made up 50% of it was non-climate control and 50% was climate control. And of course, all this begins after all the due diligence points are met, which include a market study with a positive supply, that the location has a positive attributes required for success like visibility, traffic counts, high traffic counts, and ease of access. And the reason why is because a good 80 to 85% of your clientele is going to be drive-by traffic. And then a site with the entitlements that do not impact the coverage of the site and the amount of square footage or net leasable square feet that you're going to have on the property. This is a beginning shot, an aerial photograph of the land, the 5 acres that on the Landstar Boulevard. As you'll notice at the top, there's a retaining pond, detention pond, McDonald's, there's a mobile gas station, convenience store, and on the bottom you'll see the exit ramp to Highway 417, which is a tollway. And everything that you see in green inside the fence line is the new site that we're getting ready to develop. I want you to visualize what can be placed on the site, because that's the very first thing we're going to talk about is what can we do? So we're going to look at where do we place the office, where do we place the buildings, where are we going to put the entryway, what's best for the clients to get in, what about parking while they come in and access the office, what about the security gate locations, driveway widths. Extremely important because they determine what size units you're going to place. The turning radiuses and even bollard locations to protect the buildings from people who are doing the turning radiuses. And then finally, fencing, columns, dumpster locations, and a variety of small things that people use when they're on the property. As you see, this is a site plan. This site plan is the finalization of visualizing what can be done on the property. You'll notice on Landstar Court at the top is an entryway with the office. This is behind the Mobil Oil, and it's an excellent location. It's right across from a brand new fire station that's going in, and it gives an ease and access to the property. But it does not, even though it is not on the highway, it still is seen from both Landstar Court, from Landstar Boulevard, and Highway 417. You'll notice that it locates all the different types of buildings. It locates exactly what the unit mix is in each building. And it even shows you a 2-story building that's planned on the bottom side of the site plan. All are showing basically how this project lays out on the site and how it can be seen from all the different streets, which are the 3 that are around the location. Visualization of building elevations is extremely important. We're talking about office exterior elevations, storage building exterior elevations. You'll see this is a rendering after the plans are just as we're completing the construction documents that show exactly what the color schemes and how the project architecturally is going to look from each one of the elevations that are facing a street. These are extremely important because the number one thing that sells a self-storage project is actually self-storage doors. You'll notice on the 2-story building that it has some windows. Those windows, as you can see, are designed to have fake doors behind them that at night those are lit and you can see them from the highway. So you can identify this is the self-storage project. Now also, once you've done those 2 things, you want to kind of visualize what the use of by the use of a colored site plan rendering. This takes those things you just looked at from a site plan and from exterior elevations and places them on the site from an aerial view. You'll notice that it shows the landscaping, it shows where the drives are and where the buildings are. It kind of gives you a general idea of what it's going to look from an aerial side. We now venture into the first month. The first month of a self-storage project always is site work. That is the leading activity in the first 30-day period. This first shot shows you that same aerial we saw before, a different perspective. You'll notice that the brown areas are building pad locations where the foundations are going to go. The site contractor now is completely grading the property, cutting the drives, and rough cutting the drives, and then coming in and basically doing the subgrade for the concrete foundations that are going to begin sometime this month. You'll notice that several of them are done, and there's one up at the front where you can see most of the vehicular activity they're working on at the present. Here's a close-up shot of graders and loaders that are moving dirt from your driveway areas into the pad areas and building up the pad areas for the subgrade elevations that need to be tamed for the foundations. You'll see also in the background that they're already starting to form up a building. At the same time, which that's going on when they're grading, you're also going in and putting in all your storm drainage requirements. In this particular case, we had to do a lot of underground storm drainage, move it across the road by the fire station and into the detention pond. You'll notice sometimes that gets pretty deep. At the same time, we're putting in our water or fire hydrants, we're putting in our water service and our sewer service. The second month is concrete. There are other things going on. In fact, even steel's going on this month. But the main activity is concrete. You'll notice from this aerial that there's still building pad excavation going on, or basically finalization of the subgrades. You'll notice that some of the biggest slabs have been poured. You'll even notice that there's some steel framing going on in one of the buildings. That's pretty normal within your second month for this activity. You're actually starting a production line, starting with, first of all, of course, site work, going into your building pads and your steel. Again, you'll see that we might be still working on some of the storm drainage, but we're already starting setting the batter boards at the end of the slabs. Those batter boards are used to define the corners of the buildings and the proper elevation in which the building is going to have once it's been poured with concrete. They're already starting to lay out the forms on the different projects and ensure that the final subgrade before you put concrete is 4 inches below the slabs, which are 4 inches. Here again you see the form boards going in. They've also dug out some of the grade beams. What you're seeing is them just now putting the grade beams before they finalize all the interior grade beams and they finish up the steel. You can see another elevation of that same place. The next activity is steel, reinforcement for the slabs. This is sometimes probably the hardest. You can use rebar, which you see here are number 3 rebars on 12 inches on centers. These people are tying the final rebar, which will also be raised so it to be placed in the center of the slab. You can also use fiber mesh and a variety of other things to strengthen your slab, but this is most common. What you're seeing is an area where the bathroom is located and also where there's going to be an elevator well where the elevators go up. You'll notice too that when they're starting to tie, they get in a line most times. They start tying together. They make sure that they have an even 12 by 12 spacing if that's the spacing. You'll notice also the grade beams by the form boards, how they've been dug out and the steel's been placed in because that's where a majority of the load's carried. And placement of concrete. Most times it's best to use what we call a concrete pump to start as early as you can in the morning because as soon as you can get it in and get it finished before it gets too hot, it will eliminate as much hydration cracks as you can possibly do. You'll notice that right now they've poured her down at the very end and they're getting ready to what's called a bull float the slab to make it level across and start doing fine finishing along the sides. This picture shows you again them finishing up on the end, and you'll notice the form boards that go along the side that are connected and hold a board out 12 inches from the edge of the slab. This is a brick lug. You'll notice the guy standing behind him is a brick lug that's already been pulled out. What happens? We form these things out. Once the concrete starts to harden, we pull it out and hand finish it out so that there's no honeycombing and it's a beautiful finish. Here's a better picture of that after we're getting ready to pull that form. They've bull floated and they're getting ready to, and they're still finishing the other end. But you'll see that form board out where that brick lug is going in. That's where your doors fall into, and it keeps the water, once the doors fall down to the ground, it keeps the water from coming back on top of the slab. It's going to be hand troweled out, and it's going to look just as pretty as it can be, and it won't have any honeycombing. Here they're finishing up the last. You'll see them pulling the concrete. That's the hardest part to get ready. They're pulling the concrete in and going over a formed screeder board, which basically comes through and levels out the top of the concrete before you run a bull float over it. Here's the finished result. This is probably a lot more than about 4 or 5 hours after they started finishing the concrete. You'll notice that the form boards are off. And you can see the nice brick lug along the side. You see that the form boards are still on the project. They won't come off for another couple of days after basically it's cured. And they're going through right now and taking a look and making sure that all the form boards, we haven't had any problems with forms blowing out at the time. This picture is here to show you that a design detail you might want to keep in mind. Anytime that you have climate control hallways, interior hallways for climate control, and you have drops in your buildings, you're going to have ramps. So you don't have stairs or people aren't going to use it. The best way to do that is to come back into the slab so that when the end of the ramp is at the exact level of the drop in the next slab. You can see the concrete finisher out now finishing it out. He has to walk out at the end, finish it out, and then walk back out and cover his tracks. The third month is building framing. You'll notice that at the end of the second month, you've got concrete up, you've already started that framing, but now in the third month, predominantly it's framing. You'll notice that all but except for 2 buildings have framing up on them. There's one, the top one up close to the intersection up there is a 2-story, and the concrete hasn't been poured, and there's one up there by the building trailer that hasn't been done either. But you'll notice that that's the predominant activity that's going on. Here's a slab that's finished, and what you'll see is a layout of all the columns that are going to go up to support the purlins. It's on a 5x10 grid system. We'll see a little better photo in a minute to explain exactly what that means. You notice that the slab's been cleaned off, and you have already your connections in the ground to hold up the columns. This gives you a real good idea of a 5x10 grid system. As you go across the slab, every 5 feet there's a column going up, and it goes up and it holds up a purlin. Every 10 feet you have this column going across, so the width of the door is 10 feet, so it's called a 5x10 grid system. So every 5 feet along the long walls going across the slab to the other side, every 5 feet you have a column holding up a purlin that holds up the roof, and every 10 feet you have a load-bearing wall which makes up these columns. You can see one finished right here. Again, between doorway to doorway, the center of each of those columns where the doors goes is 10 feet. You have an 8-foot 8-inch door with a header above it. You'll notice as you look down, you'll see that every 5 feet there's a column that goes up which holds up the purlin. And you'll see the people up on top of the roof. They're putting up the standing seam roof on the purlins after they've been put in. This is the first shot of the actual beginning of an interior hallway for climate control and humidity control. It starts out after you go through and put in your framing for the roof and the roof's up, you come back and start putting in the interior hallways, which are usually made by the door company. There are a variety of different people who do the hallways. I usually use the door companies and do their hallway system because it comes out a lot cleaner, which you'll see a little later. The fourth month is, again, building framing and the finishing up that, and predominantly roofing. As you'll see at this, we've seen the last 2 slabs have been poured. The first floor on the 2-story building is starting up right now. The roofs are on all buildings at the end of that 4th month. And we're going to start framing that last building up there where the office is going to be in the construction trailer. You'll see here, this is that 2-story building. We're putting the elevator well now, which has to be a 4-hour firewall around the elevator. It goes up to the first floor and it'll go up all the way to the roof. And that's going on right there. You see the purlins and the columns right beside it. Here again, at the same time where we're doing the roofs and finalizing the roofs and putting gutters and downspouts on, we're also going through and starting to finalize the drives, bringing the base in and getting it ready for asphalt. To your right, you'll see a building is just now the columns being installed, and the last building there by the office, which they'll start framing the next day or so. At the same time, we start to get to the end of the month, we start going in and putting our projections. Our projections are architectural details that surround entryways into the climate control areas. They're usually framed out in steel and done with stucco, which is probably the best way to get the architectural details you want. Here's a shot at the end of that month where you have just about all the roofs done. You notice that we start to put in some gutters, but we don't put the downspouts on until we do asphalt, because they have a tendency to be taken off by the asphalt machine when they go through. This is the final shot. Now what you're looking at in the far is not a roof. It is the steel deck on which we're getting ready to pour concrete for the second floor of that building. You'll see the elevator well right there that you saw being built coming up through that, and pretty soon we're getting ready to pour that concrete and start the second floor. Which brings us up to month 5, which is, again, building the second floor framing. That's the major activity outside of doing some finishing up and punch out of the other buildings. You'll see from the aerial that all of the roofs are up. Even the new building that we finished near the office, roof is finished. But we're now working on that second floor, which takes a lot of time because of the interior hallways and the elevator. You'll see that the framing of the entryway, which we use what's called a grocery store slide doors, that slide once you hit a motion detector, they slide open, plus the windows that are going to show the fake doors. We're also framing that as we're framing the second floor. This will kind of give you a little better shot of seeing that projection going. That'll be covered with steel and then finally with stucco that gives us that architectural detail around the area we're trying to show off to the highway. This is a fire stairs. We have stairs on each side. Just kind of give you a general idea of what you have to do at the end, because this is going to be a fire code requirement. And then again, we're in our interior hallways. This is on the first floor. We'll do the same thing on the second floor. You'll see that right now they've got the hallways in. They're going to start putting in the doors. They're also running the electrical to start when we put in the soffit, and we're running mechanical for the air conditioning. Again, while that's all going, we're still finalizing those drives, because that last month next month we're going to be doing site finishes, which is the asphalt and landscaping and a variety of other things to get the project started, along while we're finishing that last building, a 2-story building finished. Month 6 is site and building exterior finishes. Here you see an aerial where it looks like the project's about 85 to 90% complete. The roofs are all on. You'll notice that we're trimming out all the architectural details along the front of the building. We're going through and putting in our landscaping. We're going and putting in our wrought iron fencing and columns. Just a variety of site finishes are going on at this time, plus punch out of the buildings, and including finalizing the interior hallways for the climate control. We're also just now finishing the exterior of the office. As you can see, that's the office area where the security cameras are going to be and where they do their leasing. Other general areas where we put our retail. You'll also see that the end of the buildings facing the street, we're just now finishing up those with all the architectural elevations that are required that we put on our elevations. Landscaping is going in. That's close to the front of the office. We're finishing up our entryway with our security gates and our wrought iron fencing. The exterior elevations, that was the framing we saw in the previous month and how it turned out with all stucco and Dryvit that we used to give that elevation. You'll see the glazing on the top roof, and at night that'll have lights that'll come on and you'll be able to see exterior doors from the highway as they do go over the overpass. You'll see the fencing's going up, landscaping's going up, and the mechanical contractors finalizing all this stuff, including the electrician. This is the staging area from those grocery doors where people come in, they get a cart and go out and get their stuff and bring it down through in. They either get on the elevator to go up on the second floor or they go through some doors to the right to go on the first floor. We're just now finishing up the elevators and interior finish to that. The same way on the other side, you'll see the electrical panels, all the air conditioning, all is being done right now and finalized. Here's the hallway. We're now putting up the soffits, which have the lights. We like this soffit system because it gives us a full 8-foot 6-inch clearance, and there's no way really to destroy the lights as the customer moves in. The electrician now is finalizing all his low voltage wiring for security and for the lighting, and the mechanical guy is fine-tuning all his ductwork. Again, here we are finalizing our landscaping. This is the area that faces 417 that we're really trying to make it pretty with the wrought iron and the fence columns. And then final completion. And that's month 7. Look at this aerial. Isn't it pretty? We've just now finished the entire project. We're opening up for business, where our certificates or occupancies to go forward. And the place is pretty much completed. We're probably around 90% punched out. This is the office and the signage for the office and the main entryway. This is the leasing center part of the office. You can see the security cameras above. The retail, and we're just now actually at this point we're still putting in retail as it comes in. The security camera is showing and rotating all the different security camera locations throughout the site. The security gate, which is a slide gate system, where if somebody puts in their code, then the slide gate opens, and they have to put their code back in to get out, so we keep a record of people coming in and going out. You'll see the final pavement striping for the fire marshal. You'll see the bollards along the edges to keep from anybody from hitting the buildings. You'll notice the general area around that way of getting up on the second floor where the elevators are. The final grocery store doors. You can see the doors on the second floor. The fencing and all the landscaping is completed. And here's that staging area we looked at the month before. You'll notice it's been painted. The finalizing of the walls have been done. The finishes for the elevator. If anybody wants to go to the second floor, once they get into the elevator, they have to put a code, or it won't take them to the second floor unless they know it. And anybody's on the first floor will have to key it in at the door to be able on the first floor. So it really kind of is a secondary security measure. This is that stairwell for the firewalls you saw a while ago and how it finished out. Again, we put a little time on this, but you're not going to have too many people on this unless it's an emergency situation. Here are two different hallways of the finish of finally. You'll see the soffits in. When the doors are down, you'll notice that we use a colored panel to kind of break up a starkness of the white. You'll notice that we also use a convex mirror so that people, especially females who walk down a corridor, can look down the other corridor before they ever get down to the end. Our lights are on motion detectors, so as one person opens the door, the lights on that section open, and the farther they come down the hallway, the lights come on. And in some sections, you'll see that in some markets we go through, in a specific lead market, instead of having a unit number, you have an address for used with the streets that are next door. So this is Market Street with the address, which is Market Street. It's a street that's close by. So people kind of use it and kind of get attuned to it based on where they live. This is a final shot. You'll notice also the floors have been sealed, and it looks very clean. You'll see the convex mirror again, which locates an area that takes them down to another corridor or out to the door. You'll see all the security lighting. You'll see all the emergency lighting, and you'll also see intercoms down the hallway. Now, we just completed the project. Now, how do we do versus our concept? How do we do versus plan? Well, this is exactly what we looked at when we put our landscape plan to show how the project was going to look from an aerial point of view. This is the final shot. Pretty good. It's pretty close. These are our elevations that we planned and we got approved by the jurisdictions of what it was going to look like and are the architectural details we're going to be using. Almost exactly the same. This is our office, and also with that same elevations to see just as we planned for concept, we did in real. Thank you for watching this presentation. Be sure to check our website for future presentations on this topic or email me with any questions you may have. Thank you.